Donatello statue is one of his most famous, Habakkuk, or Zucconi. The Zucconi name springs from the melon-like head, if you will. This is important because it illustrates Donatello's almost obsessive rejection and rebellion against the idealism of Roman sculpture, not to mention the flat insipidness of medieval, and an obsession towards realism, even to the point of severe ugliness. The ugly face, notice the pocked nose, with a beard, several days of beard, which would have been unusual then. We can barely make out the sculptural attempts at that. The near bald head, the crossed eyes, which we cannot detect, or at least I cannot, but were apparently evident by those who are more scholarly, was that reflection of ugliness as beautiful, realism as beautiful, authentic as beautiful. And here the more wiry body underneath the heavy cloak of the prophet. And the mouth reputedly has a tongue-tied or strange, in a daze look to it. Look at this Habakkuk prophet statue and the one to the left. I can see that cloak that Habakkuk wears is heavy and maybe thick, as opposed to the rather light-looking garb of the man to the left. Perhaps that cloak is like the sleeping bag of a desert prophet, someone who must sleep in that and survive in that, whereas the man on the left goes genteelly home at night. The guidebook tries to suggest that looking at the hands and the arms, we can see the strong, straight sinews of his arms, dramatized by being exposed while the rest is covered with a heavy cloak. I'm not sure I see that. And yet when you look at statues nearby, they're smoother, but that may just be artistic rendition or lack of. Same thing here. It is Donatello's The Prophet, and you can see the contemplation in the face. But here, more interesting to me, is Abraham and Isaac. Again, the theme of Abraham's mandate to sacrifice his son, a classic Greek, lithe, young boy figure. Notice the nose. Notice at the bottom a faggot of wood on which to burn the boy after he's been sacrificed. But look at the face. You can read in the face the anguish of a father who must kill a son, and yet the commitment to do so, and the asking, looking at God as much as to say, oh, I'm prepared to do what you ask. Shall I proceed? Can you read in his face the hope that he will not be required to do so? Another recognizable Donatello, the prophet again. But notice the face. Older, riddled by creases and the lines of age. Notice the neck sinew that stands out, the somewhat bald head, furrowed brow, and the almost elegant foot. Notice the paint. And notice the pointed spike. It almost makes me wonder, were these nails pounded in, or was he pounded on? This is Donatello's classic white pine wood carving of Mary Magdalene. Notice how wretchedly thin she looks. And we'll focus on the face for a moment and walk around it. But remember that this was a beautiful prostitute once. Notice the hair plastered against her face. And look at the chest, devoid of flesh almost. Not sure if the camera can pick this up, but these are tapestries, small little tapestries. You can see the gold thread in the lower right-hand portion. Notice that the characters' faces and flesh, particularly that of baby Jesus, seem to be without any color aggrandizement. And I'm thinking they had specifically either some color or they were with gold overlay or something like that. But you can still see some of the colors, the blue on that chest, the reddish maroon on the bed clothing, so these must have been quite pretty at their origin. In this medium we can see with the architectural structure the excellent use of perspective. Single point perspective in particular here, I think. Much reminiscent of Iberti's later panels, Gates of Paradise. It's a very pretty mosaic. Notice the small pieces that are used. There's some sense of perspective. This was done in 1504, so it was well into the Renaissance. Almost 100 years after Ghiberti and Brunelleschi started. When you look at the size of the characters, like this man in the corner on the horse is much bigger than the men behind him on a horse, etc., etc., an indication of perspective. Is one of the digits or fingers of San Giovanni Battista in its reliquary. Probably the same thing there. Doesn't rise to the level of a pyramid, but seems kind of gross.